Well, thank you so much, Erica, for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks to Chris and Scott as well for always helping out with their tech support and their amazing questions that you asked Scott. So we'll invite you to do that again today. And if anybody that's on has a question, feel free to just pop it in the chat or the Q&A. And Erica has said that she will answer questions as we go, or you can save them till the end, whichever works for you. So in my introduction for Erica, she was recruited to play for one of the country's best university basketball teams, and then sustained a significant knee injury, causing her to be sidelined, but only until she discovered wheelchair basketball. So really excited to hear about your journey and kind of where you were and where you are now and everything in between, because I think it'll be really, especially this time of year and just this year in particular, I think it'll be a really great story for people to hear. So thanks again for joining us, Erica.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's actually an honor and privilege to be here. Yeah, I mean, like Angela was saying, my name's Erica Gavel. I'm originally from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. So I don't know if any of you know where Saskatoon is, but it's about 2 hours north of there. And something really unique about that community, it's called Gateway to the North. And it's a small city. I think there's around like 25,000. I would say it's the last city before the north. So in terms of like population, it's very much, I would say it's 50-50 between First Nations and then also Caucasian. So when I moved to Toronto, that was a very big culture shock for me. So this whole moving to the big city has been also another learning experience. Yeah, after high school, I actually moved to Saskatoon, which has a population of like 300,000, and that was considered big city to me. So just the progression to the GTA has been a story in itself. But yeah, so in terms of my story, I think something that has saved my life essentially over and over again is passion. And when I was getting ready to talk to you guys today, I think COVID in general has brought a lot of challenges, and it has really forced people to everyone still has to hit their outcomes, but things are different. So I think that pivot is an overused word in this whole COVID situation, but I like to see it as more as a staying nimble, meaning you just need to be quick to adapt to things. And the longer you stay in one place, the longer you're gonna stop moving forward. So in terms of my story, I think, I don't know how many of you have or watched the speech Kevin Durant gave on when he won his MVP championship, but I read it this summer, it was probably some of the most challenging times in my entire life, but I'm just gonna pull it up here. It says, oh, where is it? Oh, here it is. It says, I fell so many times and got back up. I have been through the toughest times with my family, but I'm still standing. And for me, some mornings I would literally have to get up and just go through my little checklist of make my bed, exercise, do my dishes, study for my candidacy exam, because I did that in COVID, because what else are you going to do if you're in quarantine? And it's a huge part of my PhD. So it was perfect timing. And yeah, do my dishes and go back to bed. And some of those times, like I had to keep reminding myself and tell myself, I'm still standing, I'm still standing, I'm still standing. And I don't think if I hadn't have had the upbringing that I had, I don't think I would have been able to get through the last 10 months. So while the last 10 months have been challenging for me, I also feel very blessed that my past really set me up to thoroughly excel in this turbulent environment. So in terms of my life in general, I would say my life was pretty regular up until grade 5, when I came home from school one day and everything in my house that was either red, white, or black was actually, it was in my backyard. And I mean, I was only 10 years old and my younger sister was 4 years younger. So like 5 or 6. And yeah, we came home from school and everything in our house that was red, white, or black, and it was in our backyard. And I don't know how many of you have heard of schizophrenia, but my mom, she is schizophrenic. And I would say like being in a northern community, and even it being like, I guess that's 19 years ago now. I'm getting really old. 19 years ago. Mental health wasn't something that was really ever talked about. And so, yeah, I remember like coming home from school and it's really difficult to describe schizophrenia, but in terms of the actual mental illness, it brings on a lot of things. So like depression, you are very much bipolar, you have voices in your head, and the thing is that you have absolutely no control or awareness that this is going on. So talking to someone with schizophrenia and trying to be rational with them, it just isn't there. You're not talking to a person that does not have a mental illness. You're talking to someone who has voices in their head, and that's all that they hear over and over and over again. So when it first happened, I would say my family nobody really knew how to handle it. So I don't think that things were dealt with maybe in the most like versus now with all the research and emphasis on mental health, but things got really dragged out for a super long time. So my mom was actually a teacher and taught adults who, it's called general education in Sask. So it's for adults who either quit school or drop out of school and go back to get their grade 12. So it's like people who've like probably hit rock bottom and they want to come back and essentially improve the quality of their life. And so where I'm from, a big part of that lower economic status people were it was a combination of First Nations and Caucasian. But what my mom did to get these people coming back to school was she really got into crafts. So like by crafts, I mean like making moccasins and dream catchers and other type of cultural type of things. And so this was a way to connect with her students and also like get them coming back to school. So up until my mom got sick, like she was very much like super active in the community and she exercised every day and and then just came home from one day, it was just a light switch. And yeah, so following that, my mom then, she couldn't work anymore. So she was on sick leave for a long time. But the thing with sick leave is that you can't be on sick leave for the rest of your life. Like you eventually hit a point where you would then have to transition onto disability. And my dad, he was a letter carrier for Canada Post for 30 years. He's retired now. But so, I mean, from like a financial perspective, the two incomes together, everything was fine. But when one of those incomes was gone, like our family really struggled financially. So, and the thing with schizophrenia too is like my mom was spending money very carelessly. So I would say when I was in grade 6, like finances were like a really big problem in my family. And I actually couldn't do a lot of some club sports where I'm from because it's like, it's super expensive to play something like hockey or, so school sport was something that I was 100% always involved with. So like, I mean, when I am going to major competitions and stuff, and I think about like the long-term athlete development model, like I 100% would not be here if it wasn't for teachers, coaches, the janitor who's there at 6 a.m. and that can let me in. But while this was always going on, my dad actually reffed a lot of basketball games. And so he would pick me up from school, and I'd go watch him ref basketball. Like, I remember going to the games when I was like in kindergarten and grade 1, and people would be like, "Oh, what team you're cheering for?" I said, "I cheer for the referee." So anyway, but anytime there was no one on the court, I was always shooting hoops. Like, I just loved being around basketball all the time. And so I would say that while I was going through my elementary school, basketball was just like such a safe place for me. And the thing is that whenever there was open time at school and the gym teacher or any teacher said, "Oh, who wants to go play volleyball? Who wants badminton?" Whatever it was, I was always in the gym, like all of the time, just because I love to play. And actually, my cousin, he's a year younger than me, like all summer we would just do sports. Like, we were into biking, pickup baseball, dodgeball. We'd go through like these phases, and we would fight all the time. Like, we would say we hated each other and then call each other 15 minutes later to go play basketball or something all summer. Till like probably when I was in grade 11 and he was in grade 10. Then we eventually like grew up a little bit. But yeah, and I mean, from that aspect, I would say that things became the hardest when I entered grade 9, when I started getting more involved in, like, I made the senior team at my high school in every sport in grade 9. So I immediately had big sisters because, I mean, I was hanging out with the grade 12s, and I just thought it was so cool being friends with the grade 12s. Like, it's illegal, but I actually learned how to drive when I was like 14 on one of my friends from the grade 12 group's farm. But yeah, so when I got into grade 9, I was actually really short. And then I grew like 5 or 6 inches. So going into grade 10, I went from being like 5, maybe 5'6", to then being like 5'10" and 5'11". And as from like a sports standpoint, I was a setter in volleyball, and I was also a point guard in basketball. So I mean, to be a 5'11" setter and point guard, it's a very highly sought after height. And because I had the skills of a point guard, I was kind of like a really good fit for collegiate sport after. So in grade 10, I would say that's when things were really bad. And it's so funny, but I think the rest of my life changed just from one single interaction with Lisa Tomaitis. I don't know if any of you have heard of her, but she's actually the head coach of our Olympic senior women's basketball team right now. She'll be the head coach in Tokyo. She was also the head coach in Rio and the assistant coach in London in 2012. And I played for her in university, but how it actually came to fruition was she came to my school when I was in the end of grade 9, and she said to the basketball camp that if there's anyone here that wants to play university basketball, I think that you can do it, right? And like, well, my supervisor would know that Heather, Dr. Springer, if I like, I'll work my butt off. Like, if I want to do something, I'll do everything I can to make it happen. And so when she said that, I don't know if she was actually serious, to be honest, but she said to me, yeah, she said that. And then I took what she said very, very literal. And I trained for like the next, I overtrained in high school. Like, I'm doing my PhD in exercise physiology, and I did a lot. I did almost everything wrong from a training standpoint, but it worked. And I think that's why I'm playing wheelchair basketball now, is because I overtrained so much that, but whatever, right? It worked out, so who cares? But yeah, so for the next year, trained every single day. And then I sent her an email and I said, Hi, Miss Tomatoes. I can't believe I even called her that now. Said, hi, Miss Tomatoes. You came and did a basketball camp in my school last year, and I didn't have a car or anything, right? I was 15 now, 15. And I said, I'm wondering if Junior Huskies, so it's a club program that's ran by the university, and it acts as kind of like a feeder system for their university team. I said, I'm just wondering if people from outside Saskatoon can come play for the Junior Huskies. And she was like, hi, Erica. Like, yeah, it's people can come try out, but you can't, it doesn't mean you're on the team or anything, right? And I'm like, okay, thanks. So I asked my dad if I could go play club basketball for Saskatoon. And the thing is, Saskatoon's like an hour and a half away, right? And I was 15, so I didn't have my driver's license. So, and he like he gave it some thought, and he's like, no, like it's, well, first off, the registration fee, and it's all relative. Like, I know it costs $10,000 a year to play basketball in Toronto, but in Saskatchewan, anything over $500 at the time was like a huge price tag. And so he's like, no, like it's super expensive and you don't have a ride to practices and stuff like this, right? And I'm like, okay. So I went and asked one of my teachers from high school if she could drive me to a basketball camp in Saskatoon. Because I said my dad was busy. I didn't say he said no. So I asked my high school basketball coach, who was also my social studies teacher, if she would drive me to Saskatoon to try for the Junior Huskies. So we went there and I tried out and stuff, and I ended up making the team. And so I was in this little bit of a situation where I went to Saskatoon and I tried out for this team and I made the team, and now I have to tell my dad that I didn't listen to him. I went and tried out and I made the team, and it's going to cost me like $800 and $800 that we don't necessarily have, right? And so he really wasn't impressed about this. But it's fine now, right? Because it worked out and I was right, clearly. And so, so anyways, he said, well, if you want to play, you have to pay for it yourself. I'm like, fine. So anyway, I delivered papers for like however many years, and I had a little bit, I kept score at basketball games all through high school and in elementary school even. So I think I had maybe $900 in my bank account. So I spent all my money to play for Lisa's Junior Huskies team. And so, because the thing is that this team started in April, and I was turning 16 in May. So I would only need to find, and in Sask, you can drive full license at 16. So I only had to get through like 4 weeks of being underage to drive until I could drive myself to basketball practice in Saskatoon. So my teacher kept driving me for like 5 weeks. And after that was at the end of grade 10, I think, Lisa, and this is when things were really bad at home. And this, for me, like basketball was like a way of how I coped with everything. And I actually get emotional talking about this still, but at the end of grade 11, it was one of those moments, like I never checked my email in high school. Like it's so different than now. Like, no offense, people, but I don't understand how you don't check your email when it's on every single device. It's impossible. I'm sorry. But at that time, you literally have to log into your computer and check your email. And I logged in one morning, and she emailed me, and she asked me if I wanted to play basketball for her. So that was probably like, I'm trying not to cry right now, but that was by far out of everything I've done, that was like the most meaningful thing that I've ever done. It outweighs like going to the Paralympics, everything. I'm really trying hard not to cry, but so anyway, I went there, and unfortunately, when she recruited me, she said, if you come here, we'll take care of you throughout your entire degree and basketball experience. And the thing is that I was also a very, very good volleyball player. I was actually way better at volleyball. I had Div 1 offers like all over the States because I was a setter and I could jump set. So it just works, right? You can block and you're setting the ball higher. Anyway, way better volleyball player. But she told me that if I went there, they would take care of me. And at the time as well, I would say things were also super bad in my home life and very, very, very challenging. And so when I went there, like I can confidently say that like Lisa Tamaitis like saved my life. Like I would not be here 100% if it wasn't for her. When I went into that program, she held me accountable. Like I was the worst student, and Heather and I die laughing all the time because like I almost lost my athletic scholarship twice in my undergrad. And like Lisa, so she's like, Erica, you at University at U of S, actually Dr. Carol Rogers, the dean in health science right now, she was my dean when I was at University of Saskatchewan. So it's kind of cool because like I've known her since I was 17. And like, I feel like there's two Ericas. There's like Erica during my undergrad, I just made like a lot of really bad decisions and I didn't really care about school. And then there's Erica, the PhD student who like can't get enough school. It's actually hilarious. My friends from back home, it blows their mind I'm doing my PhD, even my basketball coach. But anyway, she's like, Erica, you have a 65.4 average. And I was like, oh, that's not great. And then I said, but I only need 65 to keep my scholarship, right? She's like, yeah. I'm like, things are good then. I wouldn't have been able to pay for my school. So yeah, it was, that happened 2 years in a row. And so anyway, I would say like my university basketball career, it's still something that like, I'm over it, but it still like makes me, I just feel so unsatisfied with it. Yeah, the first year I was on the team, the first two semesters were super awesome. And then I got a knee injury. And then so that was my first knee injury. And then the following year I broke my ankle. And then the following year I got mono, and then I broke my foot again and got another knee surgery. And so going into my fourth year, I decided to redshirt because my body was broken. And that's actually where that year is where I met a sports scientist named Bruce Craven. I owe my entire life to him and Lisa, and Heather too, my supervisor. She's just the most amazing person in the world. So if any of these students have her, like, she's the greatest person in the entire world. All three of them, they're all the great. And so he said to me, if you don't listen to me, you'll be in a red shirt again. And I was like, okay. I was actually super scared, right? And so in that year, I literally trained, and by the end of August, that's when I tore the articular cartilage off of my femur and tibia, and I thought I had just tweaked my knee again. And I went into the surgeon's office, and he was like, oh, this isn't very good, like you need to get an MRI. And I then actually had to call Lisa when she was at the London 2012 Olympic Games coaching, and explained to her that I hurt my knee again and I would need to, I'm seeing the surgeon and stuff. And at the time I thought that like this knee injury was going to put me out for 6 more weeks. So on top of sitting out an entire year, I thought I was going to have to sit out another 6 weeks. And I was so mad, like livid, that I'm going to need to like get another scope in my knee and my meniscus, and I'm going to miss like the first 3 weeks of games. And so anyway, I go into the follow-up appointment after the MRI, and he was just like, it's a lot worse than what we thought, and you tore the articular cartilage off of your femur and tibia, and you can't play. You'll never be able to like run and stuff again. And that was, and on top of that, everything back home, like every single aspect of my life was falling apart all at the same time. Like my parents, they sold their house, and then my parents went separate ways, and my mom, she spent some time in like the hospital for a long time, and my dad was moving to my grandma's, and stuff like that. And then on top of that, this was dumb of me, but I thought I had more free time, so I'll take 6 or 7 classes. So I signed up for more classes because I felt that I would, I had more time to study since I can't play basketball. And I also thought that, well, since I don't have to play basketball anymore, it means I can like party all the time, because I mean, who cares if I'm hungover on a Wednesday, right? Don't have training anymore. So I would say for like maybe 4 or 5 months, I made a lot of really terrible decisions. I was failing classes, and everything was just going really bad. And right before my final exam, actually, I got a call from someone in my family saying, it's actually kind of funny because it's the class I'm teaching right now. So it has a lot of meaning to me, advanced exercise prescription. And I got a call from one of my family members saying that my mom was about to commit suicide. And I was in Saskatoon. And this was probably like 30 minutes before my final exam. I called my aunt back home. I called my basketball coach. And then I was still on crutches with my knee. I was on crutches for like 4 or 5 months. And I called them, and I remember just like, I just hit a point where I decided I'm sick and I'm done with things I can't control ruining my life. And I went to school and I told the academic advisor that I needed to speak with Dr. Rogers because I have a situation and I can't write my final exam. And so I told Dr. Rogers this situation, and she said I didn't have to write my final because it was pretty intense. So after that, though, when all this was going on, Bruce Craven actually messaged me a week before that and said, I want you to come back and do your physio and train and stuff. And he said, we really need to sit down and chat, right? And after that, because I ignored him for like 4 or 5 months, I was just over everything. I went into his office and he drew like a T on a white piece of paper, and he said, you have 2 options. You can either listen to me, and I didn't even know about wheelchair basketball. So you can either listen to me and get your life back on track and figure out your school stuff and do your physio and be here. And try not to cry. Be here 3 days a week, and or you can listen to me. And at the same time, he also said, like, you now have to get like a sports psychologist and a dietitian and everything else so we can get things back to normal. And he said, or you can go right, and you can also listen to me and do all those things and go to the Paralympics in 4 years. And so I was like, I didn't really know anything of it. And I was like, I guess so. And then I went out of the clinic. I went back to my car and stuff. And in that meeting, though, with my knee, and this is the only time that Bruce has got really mad at me, I asked him if he thought that everything would be okay. And he just like completely cut me off and said, don't talk like that. And then, And so I walked out to my car, and then I texted Lisa and I said, hey, Bruce told me if I listen to him, I'll go to sorry, I'm gonna try hard. I'll go to the Paralympics, and yeah, and then we trained for 4 years, and I made the team. So yeah, this is really hard for me to talk about right now, but I'm fine. It's all good. We had a scholarship brunch yesterday, so I'm a little bit more emotional because while I was going through all this, I asked Lisa if I needed to know whether or not I needed to take out student loans to pay for my school. And she said, we told you that we would take care of you. And so they paid for the rest of my scholarship and that. And yeah, it was pretty amazing. And I mean, another cool thing about everything that year, when Bruce forced me to get back into school, like he kind of explained to me that I had, where I was in my education, I had about 1 year and 3/4 left. And I improved my average by like 20% from an academic standpoint. And once I went to the Paralympics, one of the reasons, like one of the motivators that kept me going was I just thought it would be so cool if like Lisa was there on the Olympic side and I was there on the Paralympic side, and then it happened. So that was super, super meaningful for me. And then when I moved to Toronto in 2014, I think it was, no, I moved here in September 2015. So before that though, I was competing in the Pan Am Games, and actually Dr. Heather Logan Springer, she was doing a research project with my national team, and we had to swallow these I don't want to call them stupid core temperature pills because I use them all the time now with participants. We had to swallow these pills, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I met her and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're like the coolest person I ever met in my entire life. So then I was like, do you mind if after the study, if you can tell me what you do for your job? Because I think you have a really cool job. And then when I moved to Toronto, she met me for coffee, and at the end of that year, she encouraged me. This was before she was a prof at Ontario Tech. She encouraged me to apply for grad school at U of T, and I never really saw myself as in research or anything outside the undergrad, but she encouraged me to apply, and because I had like really dialed in on the last 1 year and 3/4 of my marks, I actually got into U of T, where I was able to do my master's under Dr. Scott Thomas. And from an academic standpoint, like that's probably something I'm like really most proud of, is just getting accepted there, because it was just such a long grind for me all through my undergrad and trying to deal with everything. And when I got my knee injury, I then started seeing a psychologist, and actually I see one like once a month, more for like check-in reasons, just for like a maintenance thing, because that has really changed my life significantly, is getting help and also being like very open about it. Heather's never told me to go see one, but I told her that she needs to hold me accountable, that I see my psychologist once a month. So she asked me every once in a while if I've been seeing my psychologist here in Toronto, just to like hold me accountable, that I keep up with my mental health. And and then I did my master's at U of T, and Heather was on my committee, and then I did my PhD, or decided to do my PhD with her. So yeah, I just find it's so cool how like one interaction with someone, like that one interaction with Lisa, like changed the rest of my life. And then the one interaction with Heather completely changed the rest of my life. And like, yeah, I'm just so grateful for all of them, and they've all been like the most supportive in doing everything they can to like help me and stuff. So yeah, I just did. So come COVID, yeah, it was an interesting time for sure. And when that happened though, like immediately one of my projects got shut down, and within the next day, like I was super upset and not happy with it. But Heather immediately reached out and she says, well, now we have an opportunity to do all of these other things that you wouldn't have time for if the Olympics were this summer. And then probably like the next day after that, Bruce reached out and he says, all right, this is the new training environment. And following that, I then met with my sports psychologist, who is also, he's actually one of the dean at University of Saskatchewan. So he understands academia and also sport because he coaches the university soccer team. And he's like, all right, so this is what you need to do from an academic standpoint over the next 5 months. And this is what you need from a training standpoint. Let's make this the new norm. Yeah, and then I did my candidacy exam in September, and that was an experience. And yeah, like when I submitted that, I actually like cried for maybe like 20 minutes, because like to get to that point in my academics, like it's been a very, very, very long journey for me to get to this point. And yep, and now I'm still standing, and just, yeah, it's been the most incredible journey. And yeah, and now I'm training for the Paralympics and doing some school stuff still. So if anyone has any questions, like, I'm happy to answer.
So Erica, I do have a question. So with COVID, and you said you are training for the Paralympics, just how are you managing the training? And obviously your training schedule's been changed. How are you coping with the changes that COVID's dealt to your training schedule?
Well, lucky for me, like I think my favorite part about basketball is training. And so the lack of games and competition, like it doesn't really affect me much. Like I actually love training more than I like competing, which is why high performance sport is a good fit for me, because you spend 85% of the time training. But I would say, like, for example, my daily training, for example, like this morning, today, I get up at 4:45. I jump on my bike trainer at home because we are very limited for gym time, and I do a workout for like an hour and a half. I eat breakfast and shower, and then go to school or go to the Canadian Sport Institute, because we're like Tokyo targeted athletes. We have exemptions for training, but it's still like social distancing and stuff. And then, so I had training from 7:30 till 11. And then I come home and I do a list of things Heather asked me to do. But I think like, yeah, I think that people, it's still possible to like keep going with COVID and stuff. Yeah.
And then you also like talked about your early careers and very independent, not listening to your father going out to the tryouts there in Saskatoon and things like that. But it seems like further on in your career and doing your PhD, you're now taking people's advice a lot more and things like that. So have you found that your decision-making has changed as you've gone further in your career, or listening to more people's advice, or are you still that independent spirit that likes doing things on your own?
I would say I'm much more, my decisions are much more calculated. So I would say and I think one thing that's really cool is that like Lisa, Bruce, and Heather, like while we spend a lot of time focusing on projects and training, the thing that they always harp on is like being a good person. And like Lisa always said this, and she still says it to her team, like, entitled to nothing, grateful for everything. And so I think I have so much respect for them that, like, I still ask them their opinion and converse with them, and I really, really value their input, because if they haven't like set the tone with me at the beginning and like made things like hard rules, I don't think I would have the maturity or the independence to make those good decisions. But after being like in that culture for so long, I would say like that's just become ingrained in me. And I think now like they kind of let me be like, well, Heather, because I work with her the most now, like it's kind of like an independent free spirit, but she'll tell me when I can't do something. So I would say it's a nice little combination of both. And even when it comes to life and whatnot, like I still ask for everyone's input, and there are people who I like really trust that if I ask for their input, they're going to tell me not what I always want to hear, but what I need to hear to keep me like on the right track. So yeah, I think I have like a really nice combination of like doing whatever I want, but then also that like respect that they would do anything in the world to help me, and all they want to do is help me. So I listen to them all the time.
I was just thinking when you were saying that, I was thinking about, that's one of the things I love most about my best friend is she won't just tell me what I want to hear. She'll tell me the way that she sees it. So, which sometimes it's a bit bittersweet, because sometimes you don't really want to hear exactly. You want her to tell you what you want to hear, but yeah, I really admire that of her for sure. So if there's some current either students or current students or basketball players, what advice would you give to somebody who's finding this super challenging right now? They're training, but it's not the same. They're not playing any games. How do you keep that get up and go? And how do you get up at 4:45 in the morning and train on your own and then go? If people are lacking that motivation, any advice for them?
Well, Bruce, because I still work with him, right? Like all of these people, all of my integrated support team, a lot of them are from Saskatchewan, so we've been working with each other for 10 years now, and which is pretty cool because we've got to see, well, they've got to see me grow up a little bit, which has been quite funny. But I think the biggest thing is like, it's understanding that like a lot of performance outcomes you really can't control right now, but you can always control giving your best given the situation you have. And I think like if you're finding it challenging, if you find training challenging right now, you need to find out like, all right, what part of my training do I absolutely love? And for me, like I love working hard. So with my bike, and I mean Heather was a professional cyclist, so just trying to fit in with my school friends is more work than trying to train for the Paralympics. But like my whole lab is into cycling, and it's really hard to keep up with them sometimes. But yeah, so I like working hard. So Bruce like designs and gives me like really hard workouts. Or if like, I mean, if your goal is to become, if you're playing basketball or anything, if your goal is like, I want to be a 3-point shooter, well, when do you have the opportunity to practice that? And then what other resources do you have to help you get there? And I think I was chatting with my basketball coach yesterday, and I said, or the last Friday, and we were talking about like, so many people want to get somewhere, but they don't have a map. They think like just because they want to do something, it happens. And what I've learned is like doing hard things and getting to those places, like it doesn't happen by accident. And there's like that one quote by Aristotle that says like excellence is not an act, it's a habit. And like especially high performance sport or even school, like it's not about doing those big things. It's about doing the right things on a consistent basis. So, but it all comes down to like the why. Like I read a book, I don't know, it's called The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and like it's about this guy who lives in a concentration camp, and like his why and the way he saw the world changed when he went into that concentration camp. But like your brain is so powerful. Like when I wanted to play for the Huskies when I was in high school, when I went to train, like all I thought about was what it was going to feel like to put on that Husky uniform. When I just decided out of nowhere, like everyone thought I was crazy. Like I don't even think Lisa thought I could make the Paralympics when I told her like out of nowhere that I was going to try to go to the Paralympics. But when I like decided that, I just imagined what would it feel like to put on that uniform to play for Team Canada at the Paralympics. Like when I went into my master's, it was like maybe the second week. I told Heather that I want to do my PhD. She's like, well, we'll see how the master's goes. I was like, all right. So that entire year and a half leading up to it, like all I could think about was, what is it going to feel like to get into my PhD program? Like when I was studying for my candidacy exam this summer, like what is that going to feel like when I pass that exam? And so if you have a why, it's like you're not dragging yourself out of bed. You're getting pulled out of bed to do what you're trying to do.
Nice. Agreed. Yeah, for sure. And Greg Francis has a question for you as well. Sounds like you have fought through many types of adversity and you have accomplished so much. With COVID, I know there are many challenges for our students. How can I get them to focus on things going forward when they're hitting challenges?
I think it's to find out why are they in university, and I think if they can figure out like, well, why am I here? Well, I'm here to get a degree. And some students, like, I mean, I teach, right? And like some students are there to get their degree. So their motivation is going to be different than where other students are like, I'm here to get my degree and get into med school. And so I think it's that constant reminder of like, well, why am I here? And what do I want long term? That's what works for me. Like my problem is that one of the reasons I have a integrated support team is so I don't overtrain, because when I have a why, when I know why I want to do something and I really, really want it, I can just if I have nobody stopping me, I'll just train and train and train and train. And same for school stuff. So that's kind of how I stay motivated. And I think it's like just so important. Like I love like celebrating and parties. Like Lisa always used to say, like play hard, party hard. So like the best part about making it through the playoffs, like we won, we got bronze at nationals one year and won Can West a couple of times, and we got silver at nationals. They actually won nationals last year, so they're national champs right now. I love them so much. But the coolest thing about staying in the playoffs for a long time was that like that's how many more weekends you had at like alumni events and things, right? But like as silly as that sounds, like it's so important to celebrate like them small successes along the way. Like and that's been my favorite part about this entire journey is it's like you're climbing a mountain, right? And in order to get to the top, you have to get to different base camps and you have to survive that climb. And so once you arrive at the base camp, it's super important to like acknowledge the amount of work that went into that, and just to be with your people and fully be proud of the amount of work that it took to get there.
Yeah, I think our student athletes can relate to that, being a first year program last year for our men's and women's basketball programs and seeing the steps they have to take in order to accomplish their goals. So good advice there.
We'll invite anybody that has any questions, feel free to pop them in to the Q&A or the chat, whichever. If you want to ask Erica something. Erica, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and ask how your family is doing. Do you get to see them much? I guess not right now, but.
My family's doing pretty good. My mom actually, she's back teaching and stuff. So that is actually a really huge accomplishment for her. She ended up getting help, and she's managing things really well. Yeah, and my dad's doing well. He just retired a few years ago. He's back home, so he's like doing little odd jobs here or there to like fill up the time, because I think he's bored with my sister and I away. And then my sister, I didn't mention this and I kind of forgot about it, but my sister had cancer in 2015 and got diagnosed when I was at the Pan Am Games. So she had Hodgkin's lymphoma that year, and she was also playing college volleyball back in she played for Medicine Hat in Alberta, and so she went through some pretty intense chemo for 9 months, and then she came back and played 1 year at Medicine Hat, and she was actually like the rookie of the year at her school and stuff, and she was a setter as well. But after that, she decided to go into nursing and focus on like the oncology stuff in like pediatrics. So she's in her third year of nursing at the University of Alberta right now. So.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, my family's doing fairly well.
Good.
Yeah,
so
I don't see them much. Like, I haven't been back since last year, and I won't be going home for Christmas because of COVID. But it is what it is.
Not too bad. When I was hearing you say that, I forgot that my sister had cancer. Like just like one other thing. So what's your self-talk on those days when you say, this has happened to me, this has happened to me, this has happened to me, this has happened to me? Like, why are all these things happening to me? Like, how do you prevent yourself from feeling sorry for yourself? And like Greg's question, kind of, how do you move forward? And those days that you feel like, life is treating me like crap.
Yeah, I think I would say up until maybe last year, when bad things happened to me, it would almost be like a compounding thing. And I would say like over the last, like especially 3 or 4 years, things are a lot better than they were in the past. But now when things happen to me, it's almost like a constant reminder that I wouldn't be here if hard things hadn't have happened to me. So I don't see it as like a negative thing anymore. It's just a reminder that like, yeah, one of the reasons I think that I've been able to do fairly well is because I've gone through really hard times, and I've had people like Lisa Tomitis and Bruce and even Heather, like they become that much more important to me. And I mean, that relationship is much more meaningful because they helped me through those times. And I think I've really been able to learn a lot from them, from I think a leadership standpoint, especially. But yeah, I would have never made the national team, I don't think, or pursued a PhD if I hadn't have gone through hard times. And I mean, up until I went to the University of Saskatchewan, like I didn't even have a passport I had never really traveled, right? And now like it's COVID, but I mean, when I was in my master's, like I submitted every part of my thesis from a different continent. And like, it's just become normal to, like I defended my master's thesis. And then, so I packed my bags, I jumped in a cab, I went to school, I defended my master's thesis, and I had a really intense committee. I used to call them that they were the sharks sometimes, Shark Tank. And then I defended my thesis. I changed, put on my Team Canada clothes, hopped in a cab, and went to the Pan Am Games and qualified for the Tokyo Paralympics. Like, it was the most incredible 3 weeks of my entire life. Like, so I think, like, I wouldn't change anything. Like, I think everything I've been through has I guess it's taught me how to relate to, like, way more people. You see things from, like, I think I give people, like, especially some of my students, like, the benefit of the doubt more often than not. I think it's definitely made me, like, a better person. And, like, the thing is like, through all my injuries, like, I learned to love learning because of my injuries. And if I hadn't have learned to love learning, I would have never pursued research. And I like research just as much as I enjoy training for sports. So I think I'm at a place now where I don't see any of that stuff as, like, poor me. It's like, oh wow, like, that was such an incredible journey to, like, go through all those hard times, but then also, like pick myself up and have some of the most, like, successful people in Canada, like, who genuinely want to help me succeed. And, like, and the way they're doing that is they're teaching me the same things that they used to become successful. Like, Heather was a dual sport national team athlete and did her PhD at the same time, and she's the lead of research and innovation. And, like, Lisa coaches the Olympic team, and Bruce is one of the most highly sought after exercise, like, sports scientists in this country. And, like, how privileged am I to have those people who, like, hold me to a standard and don't let me give up. So yeah, I think I've had, like, I don't feel unlucky. Like, I feel very, like, blessed and fortunate to have gone through all that with all those different people.
So we did have Krista, who you know, our women's basketball coach. She put a comment. I'll just read it here. Hey, Erica, your story of overcoming adversity is very inspiring. Thank you for sharing. What do you do to keep going when you have the bad days? What keys would you recommend for our student athletes?
I think on the bad days, I had a really bad couple weeks, to be honest. There was a lot of things that came up all at once. And I think I just remind myself, like that quote, like, there was a couple of times that I was training in the morning and I just kept telling myself, like, still standing, like, and then I think those hard times, they just remind me of, like, well, why do I love training and basketball? And sometimes I'll just have these little, like, flashbacks to my university coaches who, like when, and it sounds intense, but it just, I forgot to mention this too. Like, during my career, there was a point when I was playing for Lisa where they thought I had a brain tumor. And so I said to her, like, I'm too sad to go to class. And she said, you're going to class. And, like, that moment is something that sticks with me all the time. Like, on my hardest days, I'll just say to myself, like, you're going to class. Like, you just show up. And I think that, like, faking it till you make it. And, like, when I was at a really low point this summer, I just had to, like, I have non-negotiables. Like, no matter how I'm feeling, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to drink my cup of coffee, I'm going to go for my bike ride, come home, shower, study. And it was literally just a checklist that my psychologist and I came up with. And we actually, I didn't know what they were, but he says they're actually rejuvenation habits. So each day there's certain things that I do that are non-negotiables, because it keeps me, they're things that make me feel good. Like, I know if I go to bed to a clean kitchen and wake up to a clean kitchen, that's going to put I'm going to start my day off better than if my kitchen wasn't clean. If my house becomes messy, usually that's an indicator of how my life is. And so I'll clean my house because I feel better when my house is clean. So while like I do have very hard days, and I mean, like I've called Heather at like 6 a.m, on 11 o'clock at night, and she's always says like, call me if you need anything. And you know what, when people say that, they mean it. And if you need to call someone, call them, because they're they want to help. And when I was going through my knee injury and stuff, I was drinking a lot to like cope with things, because I thought that was fine. And when things got really hard a few times during my grad school and whatnot, like if I ever had that urge, I would just call Heather. And yeah, like yeah, anything I accomplish in my PhD is just because of her. Like whatever job I have at the end of all this is because of her, and she'll tell me when I need to be a better person and everything. So like I said, I just have these super amazing people in my life who hold me to like high standards, but care about me so much that they tell me what I don't want to hear, but what I need to hear.
That's awesome. I would say, yeah, for me, I was making some little notes as you were talking, the takeaways, which kind of mimic, or we heard from some other speakers that we've had on this year, is passion for sure. So your passion for all kinds of things, sports, and now research and learning, your work ethic, how it doesn't just happen. You have made all of these things happen as well, with the support of the people that are around you. Like, so surrounding yourself with people that are going to lift you up and help pick you up when you need to be picked up. And then I love that last point too that you made about having some non-negotiables. I love that idea, because yeah, it is important that we do the things that make ourselves feel good, especially in times like this. Yeah, super important. That kind of goes to that self-care that we hear a lot about, but don't maybe often do. So yeah, I don't know if anybody else has any more questions, and feel free to submit them, or Scott, if you want to say anything.
No, I think you pretty much summarized it pretty well there, Ange, and perseverance is obviously one other one that really stuck out to me as well. So thanks for sharing your story today.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. No, yeah, we'll keep our eyes on you, because we know that you're going to be doing some pretty amazing things. So yeah, thanks so much for your time. And we know it's hard to share your story, but I think it was so great for us to hear, and so authentic. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch. Yeah, and let us know if we can do something to help you out as well.
All right, maybe I'll do some research participants.
There you go. There you go. We'll do what we can.
Sounds good. I'm just kidding, by the way.
Never know. If you're not, reach out.
Yeah. Too funny.
Thanks for joining us, everybody, and thanks again, Erica, for joining us. Really great to have you.
Thanks for having me.